Hello, I'm Georgia Calvin-Smith and welcome to Across Africa, France 24's weekly roundup from across the continent. This week, kicked out and living on the streets, we speak to some of the Congolese families struggling to pick themselves up after having been forced out of Congo-Brazzaville in a crackdown 2 years ago. Also, despite assurances from Nigeria's government that it's safe to return to some of the territories formerly overrun by Boko Haram, many of those forced out remain sceptical. And Nesso and Thoughts of Home. Malian star Rokia Traore speaks to France 24 about the uncomfortable inspiration behind her latest album. She says her music is also an act of activism, aiming to raise awareness of the cost of instability in her homeland. Well, first, activists in Kinshasa are trying to get authorities to do more to help Congolese families expelled from neighbouring Brazzaville. Tens of thousands of people were forced out in a crackdown a couple of years ago. Some who returned to DRC are still struggling.
Between the street and the gutter, this is where some of the DR Congo nationals who were expelled from Brazzaville 2 years ago now live. Conditions are appalling.
Life is hard. We're only able to survive thanks to the people who pass by and bring us rice, soap and clothes. Because we have no money. We have absolutely nothing.
2 years ago, Francois set up a support group called the Expelled from Brazzaville Collective. He says he's trying hard to get support from the authorities, but so far he hasn't had any luck.
I regularly write to the authorities to give them information about what's happening here, but I still haven't heard from them. I write to them hoping they'll answer. We even hold meetings with the Secretary General or Minister's advisors. But the situation remains the same. We even wrote to the President and Human Rights Commission.
In 2014, more than 140,000 DRC citizens were kicked out of neighboring Congo. There they were blamed by Brazzaville authorities for a rise in local crime. Back in Kinshasa, the DR Congo government offered some support to those returning, but many still live in precarious conditions. The government says these families refused its help.
We offered to bring them back to their families and hometowns. It seems to me that it's their decision to accept or not. But apparently, they chose the easiest option, thinking they'd get more help.
The government is considering compensating those who lost everything. But in the meantime, life on the street is cruel. Several people are believed to have died in the last few months.
Despite Nigeria's government declaring last December that it had largely won the fight against Boko Haram, dozens have since been killed in extremist raids. Over 6 years of violence has displaced millions of people, despite assurances from Abuja that it's safe to return to some of the formerly overrun territories. Many of those forced out by the dangers remain sceptical.
Thousands of displaced people have taken refuge here in this camp in Maiduguri. They fled attacks committed by Boko Haram that are multiplying across the region. This man fled the city of Baga when the militant group attacked. In the chaos, he was separated from his wife, but he later found her in the camp.
If no measures are taken, how can I go back? How can I take myself to death? Only when Baga is secure and everything has been put back in place, that's when I'll go back.
Still, some return to their villages, hoping to pick up the pieces of their former lives. When they arrive, they find ruins and a very different population.
Boko Haram are in my village. People fled. My child died. My husband was killed. If our people return with Boko Haram everywhere in my village, how will we get in? Our village is full of Boko Haram.
Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari claims government forces are beating Boko Haram, but many areas remain under siege. Victory could be a long way off. For most, the only option is to stay in the camps.
The reason why they don't want to go home because their house has been burned, they don't have anything. Even there are some that they left and they came back due to lack of food.
Boko Haram attacks have left at least 17,000 dead and more than 2.6 million people displaced within Nigeria. And more challenges lie ahead, as the country has little money for reconstruction and resettlement.
Maiduguri's home team is a keeper. Even in the face of the threat of Boko Haram, the El Kanemi Warriors football squad have started up training once again. They're hoping that their display of spirit in the face of adversity and gains made against the insurgents may mean that the Nigerian Football Federation will soon allow Maiduguri to once more host games.
They're used to battles on the football field, but off the pitch, the El Kanemi Warriors have come up against a truly deadly opponent. That's because their home ground is in Maiduguri in northeast Nigeria, the home of Boko Haram. After 2 seasons without a home game, they've now resumed training in the city.
When there's no peace, there's no football. You can bring football to bring about peace in the community. So by the special grace of God, after 1 or 2 matches away, we should come back to Maiduguri and play, so that the people of the community should be happy that their football has brought peace back to the state.
The government claimed in December to have largely won the fight against the Islamists. But areas near Maiduguri continue to be hit by gun, bomb and suicide attacks. Despite the unrest, the team is optimistic about the future.
We are hoping and aspire for a continental ticket. The town is peaceful. We've been enjoying relative peace for a long time now. But 3 years now we've been peaceful in this town. You only hear about attacks outside Maiduguri, not inside Maiduguri.
The Warriors have their own army of die-hard fans who have repeatedly risked their lives to support their favourite players during many away games. Spirits are high knowing the team may soon play at home once again.
Everybody is feeling happy that our team is returning back to home. For almost 3 years we didn't see our darling team. And instead of always we are on our way to Kano, from Kano to Kasina, always going to and fro.
Officials are trying to convince the Nigeria Football Federation and, crucially, the 19 other clubs in the country's top division that Maiduguri is safe. The return of football here would be a relief for players and fans, but it would also send a powerful message to Boko Haram that on this piece of turf at least, peace is winning the fight.
China's economic influence in Tanzania is being reflected in the classroom. In a bid to widen the prospects of the East African nation's future entrepreneurs, a Chinese language program has been introduced in several schools in Dar es Salaam.
In this classroom in Dar es Salaam, a teacher from China is giving a Mandarin course. And these Tanzanian students are banking on Chinese language skills to widen their prospects for finding a job.
Different importance of studying Chinese. First of all is interaction in the world with Chinese people. I can be employed in the world in Chinese companies.
2 universities and 6 high schools are now offering Chinese language courses. At least a dozen Chinese teachers have been trained for the program.
I think teach Chinese in Tanzania is very interesting because the students here all work hard. They are all good students.
Tanzania and China have economic partnerships worth more than €1 billion. China has invested in building a rail network, a megaport, and a natural gas pipeline. Chinese businesses have opened in the capital. Now ties are expanding to education, and officials are encouraging students to embrace the opportunity to learn Chinese.
Chinese is a hot language now across the world. And for us to offer this course to our students, we are actually expanding their opportunities to work, let's say, in different areas as experts.
This is just the beginning for China's venture into education in this East African country. It has recently invested €2.8 million in building 2 new primary schools with high-tech facilities.
World-famous Malian singer Rokia Traore's new album is not just about the music. It's called Nesso, or Home. And Traore has been telling France 24 that it's also a bid to raise awareness of those whose lives have been turned upside down by unrest seen in Mali over the last 5 years.
The daughter of a diplomat, Rokia Traore spent her childhood travelling around the world. These days, she's consumed by thoughts of her roots, and in particular, the volatile situation in her native Mali. 4 years ago, the country was plunged into a political crisis after a coup toppled the government.
En 2014, encore 5,500,000 personnes ont fui leur maison.
Neso, the title of Traore's 6th album, simply means home in her native Bambara. Working closely with the UN, the singers helped bring attention to the plight of those driven out of their lands by conflict, both in Mali and elsewhere around the world. She's also tackled her country's politicians head-on, challenging all sides to set a good example to help Mali build for the future.
We have never had so many refugees in the history of humanity. This is the first time. Is it also exceptional? Is it going to be the last time, or is it the beginning of something we're going to accept? I'm really with them. I'm really with them. I'm sorry.
Traore was able to call on musicians from across Western and Central Africa for help with this record, but also from further afield. There are cameos from Led Zeppelin's John Paul Jones and celebrated folk artist Devendra Banhart. And she's lending her talents to others too. The singer's Passerelle Foundation has been helping young Malian musicians prepare for careers in the industry for the past 7 years. The tour in support of Neso will take Traore away from her roots once again, with shows across Europe and in the United States, giving her another stage to spread awareness about refugees and the challenges faced by her beloved Mali.
Well, that's it for Across Africa for this week. Thanks very much for joining us. Remember, you can always get more news from across the continent with us on Eye on Africa, Monday to Friday. Please do join us again if you can. Take care.